in my box. I can't hear you. Message in my box. Louder. Message in my box. Woke up this morning. I don't believe what I saw. 100 billion bottles. Watch the mama show. Seems I'm alone and being alone. 100 billion cast away, looking for a home. I'll send that SOS to you. I'll send that SOS to you. I hope that someone gets mine. I hope that someone gets mine. I hope that someone gets mine. Message in my box. Where are you? Message in my box. Send it out of SOS. 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 Come on. Send it out of SOS. 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 Yeah.
Welcome back, Lancer Library Radio. My name is Connor Elsey. And Mr. Catterat, where are you right now?
I'm in the quarantine bunker studio, Connor.
Very nice. And it was great to see you today. And thank you for everyone for tuning in and continue your listening and support of Lancer Library Radio. Today's my show. Last episode, we went down Mr. Catterat's musical path. And today we're going to do with mine. That first song was Message in the Bottle by The Police. That was a live rendition, of course. And the reason why I chose that song was, well, before I had access to the internet and access to money to go to record stores, because people kind of still do that. But my dad is a huge fan of Sting and The Police, and their albums are on constant rotation in my household. So that's kind of my preview of before I really got deep into music. But Mr. Catterat, how has your day been today?
Well, it was exciting. It was exhausting. It was fascinating. It was lots of things. Connor and I met up at the March for Peace in Waterford. And, I have to say there's so many different emotions about it. I mean, number one, there's this one about, I have not been in a lot of crowds in the past 14 weeks. Even going to the grocery store kind of troubles me a little bit. So there was that, but then there was so many people. There's so many great people that I know from Waterford, teachers, administrators, graduates, families that I had known. So, and I get to see you, I got to see your lovely parents, which is kind of weird because I haven't seen you in like 14 weeks.
Well, with the exception of Thursday or Friday, right?
Yeah, it was Friday, right, when the seniors all passed through. Yeah, that caught me off guard too. It's like, oh my God, suddenly it's this guy I've been hanging out with 3 times a week. He's suddenly there. So yeah, and then hearing some former students talk, Luther Wade and Naomi Jones in particular.
Powerful.
Well, powerful and troubling and humbling, from a teacher standpoint. I want to, I want to make the library, at least what little control I have, feel like a welcoming open space. And I mean, they didn't point out they didn't say the library, but they did say Waterford High School and some troubles they had there. And, I feel like I'm completely blind to that. So that was humbling and troubling. It makes me wonder, it makes me wonder what we can do differently, what I can do differently. But I thought Naomi Jones in particular, I thought was wonderful. She was very, very powerful speaker.
Absolutely. I don't know Naomi personally, but her spoken word passage, it got me really emotional, honestly. It was just so well written, and it just really painted a picture of the struggles that she's had to go through, throughout her life. And Luther, who I've been on sports teams with Luther's a good friend of mine. He is the definition of a leader, honestly. And, seeing what he did today, getting a predominantly white town to have, what do you think, a couple hundred people maybe kind of gather and
yeah. I mean, it filled up about half of the front parking lot of the town hall. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. And, it was cool seeing teachers at our school, there. Obviously there's a pandemic still going on. Teachers live, distance. They have their own personal lives, but it's cool to see, in your community, thank you for being there. Thank you to a bunch of other teachers who are there, and as well as people who work in our school, Miss Mosier, Kevin Blackburn, Miss Baumgardner, Miss Mosier, Mr. Fioravanti, Miss Herr, Miss Rokia. And there are probably people I'm forgetting I just didn't run into, or see Miss Long at the middle school, Miss Morawski at the middle school. And it was great seeing, educators be there, coaches be there, administrators be there. So, yeah, it was a really, really positive experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think ultimately it was. And, it makes me think about, how can I make myself more available? Like, I said it on a previous show, if a coworker of mine or a student of mine or a neighbor of mine is in crisis, then, it's my responsibility to make myself available. I don't know what I can do to change it, but if the very least I need to be able to say, what can I do? And, and stop and listen. And, I hope I'm make myself approachable enough, available enough. So that's the type of thing, and they brought this up, you got to be a little bit uncomfortable, and it's always uncomfortable when you stop and go, so maybe I'm not, maybe I can do something else, or, I didn't realize that this was going on. So that's, makes me a little uncomfortable, and I'm okay with that. I probably should be a lot more uncomfortable. So ultimately, and yeah, you're right, predominantly white town. Luther Wade, kudos to him, brought a large group together peacefully, thoughtfully. It was very impressive.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a great experience. And if anyone listening right now, if you have not been to a march, if you're very much interested in doing it, both experiences I've had, whether it be Waterford, New London, have been very peaceful and empowering experiences. So if you have the opportunity to do so, please do. Our next episode, by the way, is our last episode. If you have any questions for me or Mr. Catterat, please send us some emails. Our last episode will be released on Wednesday. And yeah, we're just going to interview each other pretty much. But to start kind of off on my musical journey real quick, my first record I did bought was a Pearl Jam record. I went back and listened to that Pearl Jam record, and, it sounded a lot better a couple of years ago. And that was okay. Bands, like Pearl Jam, for instance, very, very popular in the 90s. And their music in the 90s is great. But one band that in middle school I loved, and I played bass, and the reason why I played bass is because of this guy named Flea, who was a bass player of a band called the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So our first song is the band I first really became obsessed with. And here's their song Snow off their album Stadium Arcadium.
Come to decide that the things that I tried were in my life just to get high on. When I sit alone, come get a little known, but I need more than myself this time. Step from the road to the sea to the sky, and I do believe that we rely on. When I lay it on, come get to play it on, all my life to sacrifice. Hey, oh, listen what I say, oh, I got your hey, oh, now listen what I say, oh. When will I know that I really can go to the well one small time to decide on? When it's killing me, when will I really see all that I need to look inside? Come to believe that I better not leave before I get my chance to ride. When it's killing me, what do I really need? All that I need to look inside. Hey, oh, listen what I say, oh, come back and hey, oh, look at what I say, oh. The more I see, the less I know, the more I like to let it go. Hey, oh, whoa, whoa. Deep beneath the cover of another perfect wonder, where it's so white as snow, privately divided by a world so undecided, and there's nowhere to go. In between the cover of another perfect wonder, and it's so white as snow, running through the field where all my tracks will be concealed, and there's nowhere to go. Oh! Send to amend for a friend all the channels that have broken down. Now you bring it up, I'm gonna bring it up just to hear you sing it out. Step from the road to the sea to the sky, and I do believe what we rely on. When I lay it on, come get to play it on, all my life to sacrifice. Hey, oh, listen what I say, oh, I got your hey, oh, listen what I say, oh. The more I see, the less I know, the more I like to let it go. Hey, oh, whoa, whoa. Deep beneath the cover of another perfect wonder, where it's so white as snow, privately divided by a world so undecided, and there's nowhere to go. In between the cover of another perfect wonder, where it's so white as snow, running through the field where all my tracks will be concealed, and there's nowhere to go. I'll say it yeah. Oh yeah, tell my Lord now, hey, yeah. Oh yeah, tell my Lord.
Awesome. That was Snow by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And as we continue down the history of me discovering music, after I kind of went through my 90s alternative rock phase, I discovered a new genre of music. That genre was called hip hop. And ever since I kind of discovered that sound, which was not present in my household, as my mom and dad grew up on, stadium rock on MTV. So for me, when I kind of discovered hip hop, this was kind of a really rare thing, because in Waterford,
There's not a
in
lot of
past
it.
generations. What's that?
There's not a lot of it.
There's not a lot of it. And as I kind of went down this rabbit hole of reading blogs and watching YouTube videos on the history of hip hop and how diverse of a sound it is, I just became obsessed with it. And one of those people I became obsessed with was a guy named MF Doom. MF Doom does not do interviews. He goes by like 8 different names. MF Doom is one of his titles he goes by. And he wears a mask on stage, which is a Doctor Doom mask from the Marvel universe. And so this guy is super mysterious. I became obsessed with his work because of how great he is as a lyricist. And 2 shows ago, we played an instrumental by a guy named Madlib. And in 2004, Madlib and MF Doom became Mad Villain, and they dropped a collaborative project called Mad Villainy, which changed my life listening to it. And it's on my Mount Rushmore of albums. And here we have the clean version of a song called All Caps.
All right, Connor, I'm gonna cue this up in like 30 seconds, but I think the one thing we didn't tell our listeners was who was on the show today.
Oh, yeah. We have 2 very important guests, 2 very smart human beings. We have Miss Collins, the greatest English teacher of all time, tied with Miss Tebow, of course, and Mr. Collins and Mr. Silvestri. And then we have Nehemia Calixte, who is a friend of mine. She's also one of my classmates. It's the class of 2020.
And these were the very first 2 guests. We talked about this in the past, that this is BC. This is the pilot. They were the ones that stepped up, and when I said, hey, I want to do this weird thing, and they were both like, yes, period. It wasn't like yes, but it was like yes, and they were great. So we'll be getting to them, but right now we got, and so on the other side of this, you're going to be talking to Ms. Collins. All right, so Let's get to Mad Villainy.
So nasty that it's probably somewhat of a travesty having me. Then he told the people, you can call me your majesty. Keep your battery charged, you know it won't stick, yo. Man, it's not his fault you kick slow. Should've let your trick walk, chick hold your sick glow. Plus nobody couldn't do nothing once he let the brick go. And you know I know that's a bunch of snow. The beat is so butter. Peep the slow cutter as he utter the calm flow. Don't talk about my mom, yo. Sometimes he rhyme quick, sometimes he rhyme slow, or vice versa. Whip up a slice of nice verse pie, hit it on the first try, villain. The worst guy, spot hot tracks like spot a pair fast. Sad shots of the scotch from out the square shot glasses. And he won't stop till he got the masses. And show him what they know now through flows of hot molasses. Do it like the robot to headspin to boogaloo. Took a few minutes to convince the average boogaboo. It's ugly, like look at you, it's a damn shame. Just remember all caps when you spell the man name. And you know it like a poet, like baby doll. I bet she tried to say she gave me her all. She played ball. All bets off, the villain got the dice rigged. And they say he accosted the man with the sliced wig. Allegedly, the investigation is still ongoing. In this pesky nation, he got the best con flowing. The pot doubles, now they really got troubles. Madman never go like snot bubbles.
That was all caps by MF Doom and Madlib under the name Mad Villain off of their classic record, Mad Villainy, released in 2004 off of Stone's Throw Records. But more importantly, we have the great Miss Collins here, English teacher at Waterford High School. Miss Collins, how you doing?
Connor, I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Of course. And thank you so much for coming on the show again. And thank you so much for being a pilot for what will become this great project here. How have you been during quarantine?
I have been well. Thankfully, our health here is good, and the circle of my closest and dearest has all been good. So we are grateful in our little bubble. And yet, this strange dual experience of living in my bubble and knowing this greater unfolding has been taking place has been somewhat of a surreal experience, Connor, if you can imagine. I'm sure you can. Yeah, it's very difficult in some ways to get my head around everything that's going on, but in the day-to-day life, lots of sweetness and goodness.
That's great. And that's a great response and a great way to look at it. Before the show, we talked about, I thanked you for you presenting the idea to me of a commonplace book. And we talked about a book called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Carol S. Dweck. And when I first had you as a teacher, I'm going to be honest with you, I thought of this idea of the commonplace book as like the stupidest thing, the biggest waste of time. However, it's become an essential part of my life. What have been some benefiting factors for you of keeping, and what is a commonplace book?
Well, a commonplace book is a place where you would traditionally record your experience, but in a sort of a broad way. You could write about your day-to-day events, but it would also be a place that you would collect quotes, maybe passages from readings that you were doing, and as you would basically be documenting in a way your intellectual journey. So it's a combination really of your thoughts and experiences and those other thoughts and experiences as they inform you. That is my understanding. And it's traditionally, as I may have told you last year, hundreds and hundreds of years people have been keeping books like this, and they continue to do it to this day. And I continue to do it to this day, every day. So that's what it is. I'm not sure if you also asked me what the benefits were. Did you include that in your question? Okay.
I asked, like personally for you, what have been some benefits to keeping this?
Wow. It's just so hard to answer that because the benefits for me have been so broad and so significant. So, to summarize, it's a writing practice for me, and it's a place where I have an opportunity to really just deepen my thinking. It's where I process my life. It's where I digest, if you will, what's happening to me both externally and internally. Writing about my experiences and collecting the quotes and passages that are helping me make sense of the world, it's become such an integral part of who I am that I don't know if I wouldn't be the same person today if I wasn't someone who maintained that practice these many, many years. So it's the gift that keeps giving in so many ways, and I start the morning often. I don't know what I'm going to write. I don't know what's on my mind. I don't know how I'm feeling. I don't know what's going on, but I pick up the pen. I have some books usually with me, books that I'm reading, and I spend that time. And what's amazing is the words come. And then, I'll be thinking about something and I'll say, oh, wait a minute, I read something in that book that makes sense here. Let me bring that quote into that. So then that quote gets included. And then there's another passage that speaks to what I'm trying to explain, and I'll bring that passage in. So it's just been a place where I feel like I've come to know who I am, what I care about, what my values are. And usually by the end of the morning or by the end of the write, I also know how I'm going to do my day. I have a sense of groundedness and a sense of purpose. You know, you could call it an intention in a way. But I pretty much know when I'm done how I'm going to go. And I'm so grateful for that, because without that, sometimes I think the life would just sort of whip me around in all different directions, but it grounds me and gives me purpose and direction. So there you go.
No, that was a great, that was
That's
awesome.
what it does.
That's what it does. I know for me, what I do is personally is I kind of keep, like, I write like about a page or so, like in the morning, just to like set my kind of goals and intentions for the day. And then at night before I go to bed, I kind of just, go all in detail if I did accomplish what I wanted to do, things that happened, how I thought about it. And I don't know, it's been very, it's been very, very, just, it's helped me out a ton over the past year and year and a half, actually, because I started doing that more regularly when I had you later on down the school year. But how has teaching been? Because I know you like to interact with people, you like to communicate. How has that been for you doing it through a computer?
I know. I was thinking about that before we started this afternoon, because I was imagining you'd ask that question. And, this period of time has been so full of paradoxes. And it's been fascinating, really, to watch things, so many surprising things unfold, including my own relationship to distance learning, which I did think at first would not be a good fit for me for exactly those reasons that you're describing. I love classroom energy and I love group dynamics, and there's nothing like a live class. And I will tell you, that still remains true. There's nothing like a live class. And what I noticed about doing my Zoom classes is I really did enjoy them. But when they were over, I usually had to lie down for a while. Like I just felt so completely drained, which is very different from a great class. After a great class, usually you kind of want to jump around because you're so energized. But that was definitely not the experience. It is a kind of a black hole drain to teach via Zoom. That being said, however, I found a lot of richness, surprisingly, a lot of richness in the experience. And I think part of that is because, frankly, I felt a tremendous sense of responsibility and obligation to help my students. So I was very much filled with a deep sense of purpose. I knew that they were reeling from what was happening. I knew they were in a free fall, as we all were and still are. I knew that, they were just kind of desperate for some kind of anchor or life raft, if you will, to hold on to. And so the Zoom classes, the work that I assigned, and the coaching that I attempted to offer felt really, really meaningful and really important. And I'll tell you something else. Students, I'm not sure what your experience as a senior was, and I do teach seniors in my speech class. I think it was slightly different for the seniors, but those juniors, man, they got an education. Not the education that they necessarily asked for, but they learned so much about themselves. I had introverts who learned that they were extroverts. I found extroverts who found out they were introverts, just for one example. I mean, the kind of self-inventory, the kind of work that they did individually in this period of reflection and pause was unlike anything they'd ever experienced. And I felt just felt very connected to the students as we went through this together. I found the classes helped to anchor me too. They anchored me in my week. They gave me a real purpose. And it was funny because on Thursday we kind of wrapped up, and I found, like, on Friday I was sinking a little bit. I was in a little bit of a low spot, and I realized it was probably because I'd lost my connection to the students. So yeah, in the end, it was one of the most memorable teaching experiences that I think I've ever had.
Yeah. I yeah. I know for me personally, through the online stuff and throughout all of this, having to be so isolated all the time, thankfully I've been working, I do this, I, have school, of course, and trying to settle, get college stuff set up. But I know a lot of friends of mine have kind of been struggling a little bit because, after school's done, there's not much really to do or go to. Now things are starting to loosen up again. But when we are allowed to kind of, I know you're an expert when it comes to mental health, and you're a huge fighter for trying to increase teaching and support of that. Um, when Corona starts to settle down and die down, and we can meet in groups again, where do you think teachers in schools should really increase their teaching and focus on mental health?
Absolutely. I mean, I've always thought that. I've always believed that, and I think now the call for that is greater than ever. I mean, so much has been shaken down through this experience, Connor. We so many systems, just so many institutional systems are experiencing a shakedown of, in my opinion, profound implications of all of that, and education is certainly right up there. We are seeing what wasn't working, and we are also seeing what was working and what we miss, and what we wish we could go back to. But I think we're also looking back and realizing how much of that wasn't working for us, wasn't actually, and like my students, they didn't know how to learn. They didn't actually know how to learn. They didn't know how to set up their own time schedules. They didn't know how to manage their time. They didn't know how to break down tasks into manageable chunks. They had this idea that if they went to school every day for 5 days a week, they pretty much did their part. They showed up. And the rest was kind of gravy. The rest, if it happened, it was nice, but it wasn't a given. Once that school day was taken away, they were left with sort of nothing in their hands, and they had to really recreate, how can I make this meaningful to me? How can I make this work for me? And how can I not be a victim and just complain that life stinks and I got a raw deal? So, how does this address to the mental health? I think, what we have to do when we come back to school, we have so many questions that we have to explore. So many, the possibilities now of reimagining public education have never been greater. And honestly, I'm super excited about the future because I know things are going to change. I mean, they have to, and they're going to change, I do believe, largely because of people like you and your generation. They're going to change for the better because students will ask for it now. Students will demand it. And they're no longer going to be satisfied with just being passive receptacles of learning or teaching. They want to be actively engaged. They want to be critical consumers of education. They want to be inspired, and they want it to matter. So the mental health piece is sort of built into that, but I think it's even bigger than that. I think public education is going through a tremendous gauntlet right now. And when we come out on the other side of it, it's going to be different, and it's going to be better. It's going to be better.
I think so. Especially I think with what we're seeing right now, online, like Mr. Catter and I saw in person today. I think my generation, is really the first one to really be like, the idea of being an individual is, I think, a really great way to compare my generation. I know after, I've always had my own personal beliefs, but I've always kind of felt a little hesitant of sharing them, and seeing so many people I know kind of all of a sudden agree with me, whether it be online or in person, like today, for instance, or on Twitter or wherever. I've kind of really started to realize the importance of myself and my own voice. So I think hearing you say that as an educator, and seeing people like Luther today, like people who know how to lead, I think my generation is really full of that. And I'm really excited to see the changes that come out of all of this. But Ms. Collins, I know we're on a little bit of a time constraint here. And I want to say thank you so much for coming back on again to the show. It was great hearing you. I hope to see you soon. What song have you brought for us today?
Hold on.
Oh.
So the Commonplace book, I want to go back to that.
Okay, yeah.
We got 15 minutes, Miss Collins. You're
Yep.
good with that, right?
Oh,
Yes,
perfect.
sir.
All right, sweet.
All right. So I do not keep a Commonplace book, but I'm interested in where each of you find you get your quotes from. The journaling part, I've kept journals before in the past, and I've got a shelf full of just scribbling. But are you just using it as a journal, or are you excerpting things from songs or books or whatever? And so, Miss Collins, where do you get your quotes from?
Well, the question really becomes, well, what are you reading? What are you reading? So I'll just sort of give you a recent example. When George Floyd was killed nearly 3 weeks ago now, I was looking through my books, and this is sort of the English teacher, the classic English teacher move. But when life gets really confusing and things start feeling like the wheels are coming off the bus, I go to the books. I looked at my books. I looked to my bookshelf, and I look for a title. I just look for a title that I think will be a comfort to me. And I was so fortunate that I had received a bunch of books from my daughter, who was cleaning out her bookcase, and I had stacks on the floor, just stacks of books. And I stumbled upon this. I'm grabbing it now. I stumbled upon this book by Alice Walker, and the title of the book is "We Are the Ones We Have Been Waiting For, Inner Light in a Time of Darkness." So, of course, the title alone just completely grabbed me. And I spent the next, I actually I was rereading this morning, I was rereading this book again. I've been reading this book for the past 2.5 weeks, and I can't read without a pencil in my hand. So as I'm reading, there are lines that just absolutely reach up, grab me by the throat, and say, this is the moment for this line. This is what you want to hold on to from this reading. And those are the passages that I would then bring into my Commonplace book as helping me to understand and make sense of my own life. So it just comes down to, well,
what are you reading?
What are you reading?
Okay.
The other thing that I've been reading, believe it or not, you'll find this shocking, but I have been a Ram Dass fan forever.
Shocking.
I know. And yet I never had my own personal copy of Be Here Now until recently. And I grabbed that book. That was actually earlier in the spring that I finally got a copy of that. Have you ever seen that book? That's a fascinating book. Like the layout of that book alone, it's not left to right; it's top to bottom. It's completely surprisingly laid out, and it's written on like butcher block paper with a lot of artwork. So it really invites you to have kind of a marker in your hand and interact with it. But yeah, I was reading Ram Dass, and I just thought, how is it possible that I never read this book before? It's so incredibly helpful to what's happening right now. So I just always go for the books that I think I need the most. I'm not a huge fiction reader. I like fiction, but I have a very particular taste when it comes to fiction. I don't like wasting my time. And if a book feels like it's a waste of time or just a kind of pleasant escape from the days, I tend not to take it on, because I feel much more pressing questions in my own heart that I need answers to. And that's where people like Alice Walker really come through. What a great book, by the way.
And you, Connor, do you jot down quotes?
I do. And to kind of go off of the George Floyd mention that Miss Collins do, I'm going to bring this back to music a little bit, but I kind of was doing some research on Mr. Floyd, and it turns out that he's actually a former rapper, and he actually was involved in the third. So he's from Houston. He's from the Third Ward, which is a project housing in Houston, which actually Beyonce is from actually originally. It's half urban part, half suburban part. It's a really interesting part of Houston, and there's one DJ from Houston by the name of DJ Screw, who's influenced a ton of people. One of which is Travis Scott, who's a very relevant rapper. And I actually found some of Floyd's music online after doing some super deep digging. But yeah, I've just kind of listening to a lot of people from Houston and kind of taking quotes from their music, like Beyonce. Beyonce's album Lemonade is an unbelievable record. I've been going through and kind of taking some notes off of that because it kind of pays homage to Houston as well as Louisiana, where her parents are from. And I've been kind of taking quotes from that recently. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. All right. So, Connor, you were about to have Ms. Collins introduce her song.
Yeah.
I think when I interrupted the two of you, I'm sorry for interrupting. I was just curious.
No, that was great. That was great commentary right there. But Miss Collins, thank you
Yes.
again for a great
Yeah.
discussion. And
Well,
what
let me
songs do you
say
bring for us?
let me say something about the song because I spent a lot of time thinking about this song, and as you can imagine, I went through so many different possibilities, and there's a lot of music out there right now, Connor. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of music right now that's going to feel really appropriate and strong. And we could spend hours just playing back and forth, but I settled on this old classic because I think it really addresses in so many ways how I'm understanding what's happening right now. And I just want to put it this way, you know, it started with COVID, I think, because we had to really stop thinking just about ourselves and think about how our actions impact other people. So we began to make these changes and adjustments in our behaviors in the spirit of caring for others beyond ourselves. And now it seems we're being brought to a whole new level of that same idea, which is there comes a time when absolutely the individual is so important, and there's something bigger than that. There's something even bigger than just our own experience, and that is the experience of other people, and thinking about how to be present, how to take in experiences, not that you necessarily have had, but to really empathically and compassionately open ourselves to the experience of other people and make room and make allowance for their experiences to be as valid, as important as our own. I remember one person said this to me once. It sounds so obvious, but I never forgot it. Did you ever imagine, Connor, I may have said this in English class, did you ever imagine that every single person that you meet has a story of their life that is as important to them as your story is to you? And I remember just being like rocked by that. How is that possible? How is that possible? But of course, it just changes everything when you take that, really, really take that on. So I thought the song did a good job of pointing us in that direction, that there is something to be said for really embracing the others in our lives and taking heart and bringing heart to the experiences that we're all having. So that's why I chose that song.
Awesome. And that song is The Beatles. It's a classic. All You Need Is Love. Thank you again, Ms. Collins, for a
Thank you,
great
Connor.
discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Catteritt.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. And we hope that YouTube gods allow you guys to hear this. But if not, I'll put it down in the comments. Here is All You Need Is Love. All right, that is All You Need Is Love by the Beatles. And we hope that makes it through. We don't still quite understand how YouTube decides what they want on there or not. But if not, we'll end up putting it down in the comment section so that people can listen to at the appropriate time. We know our listeners love that. So this is Connor's musical journey today, but Connor was nice enough to give me one song. And the reason he gave me this song is because a good friend of mine gave it to me. And this is, I'm always bringing the show into the past. So now I'm bringing it 600 years into the past, maybe 500. This is from the 14th century, and it's sung by Ms. Catherine Aaron, who is Mr. Collins' wife, and also happens to be the assistant director of the Chorus of Westerly. And she recorded this and dubbed herself in 3 times. So you'll hear 3 voices. They're all hers. This is called, and I'll probably get it wrong, our Latin teacher will not like but I'll give it a try. Salve Virgo Virginum from the 14th century. Let's see what happens.
Salve Virgo Virginum, ardent genitoris, salve lumen luminum, radius splendoris, salve flos convalium, stilla verioris, nostra specie in te. Salve Virgo Regia, porta salutaris, veri virine scia, quia Deum paris, ave quia deica, prole fecundaris, nostra specie in te. Ave nostre spei, finis et salutatis, ave perquam rei, et antorum tutis, ave speciei, Deus et salutis, nostra specie in te.
All right, that was Salve Virgo Virginum sung by Catherine Aaron, the wife of Mr. Collins, no relation to Ms. Collins, who was just on the show. She's the assistant director of the Chorus of Westerly, and that was her overdubbing her voice twice so that she had 3 layers of voices on there. What'd you think about that, Connor?
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was really great.
Wasn't it? Well, we've gotten I think this is like our 3rd or 4th person that has just given us stuff. It's just really cool. And that was a great interview. That was nice having Ms. Collins on. There's a reason that I had her on the first show. Because once you ask her a question, there's no looking back. All right. Let's continue with your musical journey. What do we got up next, and why are we listening to it?
So up next is not as peaceful and lovely as what we just heard. It's a little bit more on the raw side of things. Now, when I was in 8th grade, actually I was in 7th grade, I saw the Foo Fighters in concert with my Aunt Laura. Thank you, Aunt Laura. They played at Fenway Park. It was a great show. Dave Grohl, their lead singer, who's also the former drummer of Nirvana, broke his leg in Sweden. So he played in this giant throne. And about, I think, a year later or so, or actually maybe it was that year, I don't know, I can't remember. But the Foo Fighters had this documentary on HBO called Sonic Highways. And basically they had an 8-song album, and each song was recorded in a different city that has a big musical historical background. A lot of them I was excited for, like LA and New Orleans and Seattle and Chicago, New York. But Washington, D.C. was on there, and I couldn't think of anybody from Washington, D.C. besides people who are political and Dave Chappelle. I couldn't think of anything. And if you haven't seen Dave Chappelle's comedy special, please do so. But, the episode was mind-blowing to me because I discovered the world of underground DIY hardcore punk rock. Now, when I always thought of punk rock beforehand, I thought of the Ramones and the Clash. But no offense, Mr. Catterat, although those bands are great, they are not as raw and kind of DIY as bands like the Bad Brains or Minor Threat. And up next, we have off their self-titled record released in 1982, we have the Bad Brains, which are the craziest punk band I've ever witnessed on YouTube. Their lead singer HR is doing backflips over and over again. They were really, defying for that sound at that time. They were an all-black punk band. They had dreads down to like their elbows and their shoulders, and they're all wearing Adidas jumpsuits, which at the time it was just all white guys and leather with shaved heads. But instead it was this really great visual of the Bad Brains, and they were just an incredible band and very fast paced and not as lovely as Mr. Collins' wife. But here is Sailing On by the Bad Brains.
And when we got on the other side of this, we have our other returning guest, Nehemia Calixte. We look forward to that. Hopefully this doesn't drive her away, or maybe it'll just pump her up. So, Bad Brains, Sailing On. That was the Bad Brains with Sailing On. And I have to say that the thing that made it for me were those last 15 seconds where they suddenly turn all Olivia Newton-John pretty and then ended with a squat. That was great.
And Mr. Cataract, before
yes, sir.
I believe Rick Ocasek produced that album.
Oh, from the Cars.
From the Cars, yeah.
Wow. Oh, well, that was great. That was great. I got to get, obviously, I got to step up on my Bad Brains. I'm not certain that, I don't know why I missed them. Anyway, we can talk about this in a second. We have in the studio, the Quarantine Bunker studio, for the second time, Miss Nehemia Calixte. How are you, Miss Nehemia?
Bonjour. I am doing well. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm so excited that you came back. I was re-listening to the very first show that we did with you and Ms. Collins. What are you talking about? It was a great show, and it was made great because of the two of you.
It was a good show. It was a good show. Sometimes, though, I just can't bring myself to listen to my voice on recording. I don't know why.
Well, there's been a few of these shows that I listened to, and then some where I'm like, yeah, I know, we got it. I don't want to listen to that again. So I'm with you on that. Now, I was listening to the show, and you were saying how, like, we were only like 2 weeks in at the time, right? Distance learning hadn't really kicked in. But you were saying one thing, that you felt like this was forcing you to come to grips with time management and stepping up in that way. So give yourself a grade. How do you think you did on time management?
You know what? After that interview, I realized that I can't say this again to other people, that I don't know what I'm doing. I have no schedule. So I sat down with myself before I got all busy with doing everything in my life. And I decided to make us a very loose schedule of what I should do. So, I have class at this time, I do my homework at this time, and I, do a bunch of other stuff at different times. I think that it's helping me to become more of a quote unquote adult, right before college. So I know what I'm supposed to be doing at specific times, and organize my life in some sort of way.
So you actually followed through with that.
I did, which is surprising because I don't follow through with a lot of things.
That's all right. So you're good with that. And then I remember the other thing that you were saying, and like I said, this was 2 weeks in, and it was still, things were a bit up in the air. But you were also saying you were discovering your inner artist. You and your dad had done a couple of Bob Ross-ish paintings.
Esque. Yes.
Yes. And how did that, did you do any more of that over the past 12 weeks since we last spoke?
Yeah. So I painted a few pots, the flower pots. But then I also got into poetry. And if you would allow me, well, first, I just want to say that I've been reading a lot of Maya Angelou poems, two in particular that everyone should look up is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings and Still I Rise. I feel like the first one, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, is kind of a look into how a person of color feels in America, and it'll help someone who's not a POC to understand where that person is coming from.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful poem, and it's based on Paul Laurence Dunbar, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah. He's a wonder. I love Paul Laurence Dunbar's poetry. He's one of the first poets to write in dialect, an African American dialect in particular.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, but and he has a great poem called "We Wear the Mask," and it's great stuff. Can't recommend it enough. And Still I Rise. Yes, sir.
Can I cut in real quick? I actually have Maya Angelou's book of poems, or her collection of poems, in my house. Unbelievable read. Awesome. Very, very brilliant lady.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
So you've been doing some poetry reading. That's nice. Have you been writing?
This is what I wanted to say. I have not. So Ms. Collins and Connor, please don't yell at me. But I've been I've been reading a book called The History of Rome by Titus Livius, and I haven't had the time to record my thoughts to really sit down and analyze what's going on in my brain. But if you'll allow me, I do have a passage that I want to read from the book by the translator of Livy's book, because it was written in Latin before.
Sure.
And it helped me surprisingly in a lot of ways understand that individuality and knowing who you are and what you stand for is more crucial now than ever, in my opinion. So
what do we got?
Yeah. Okay, bear with me. It's a heavy book. Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Style is too serious a thing to monkey with, or to even make pretenses about. To try to imitate another man's style, even the style of the man next door, makes false writing. To try to imitate the style of a foreign author who has been dead for over 2,000 years is plain silly. The truth is that every writer, whether he is a translator or not, can only write in one style only, his own. I have endeavored about different ways to understand Livy's precise meaning and to express it as clearly as I could. But in the following pages, milky plentitude is, I fear, conspicuously absent.
Wow.
That's it. Yeah, I love this guy, or actually it's a woman. I love the way that she writes. And she says it so well that, you can't, though you are trying to translate word for word what he says so you can get his style, you're only going to fail in doing so. So you need to essentially get the gist of what he's saying and write it in your own words.
And understand that you're, unless you're a Latin scholar.
Right.
Fortunately, I happen to know one, but I happen to live with a Latin scholar, so she can help us out with that. But there's a certain point where we're on the outside of other people's lives. Doesn't mean that we can't try to get into their lives,
right?
And get something to walk away with. But yeah, that's excellent. That's great. And you've been enjoying the book?
I just got it because I how I used to work at the book barn.
Sure.
I discovered that, or I forgot that I had one of the book certificate things that they gave me for Christmas. So I wanted to just spend the rest of it since I'm moving soon. So I decided to get this leather-bound book, and because I want to minor in classical studies when I get to college, I thought that this would be a good segue to start wrapping my mind around, ancient Greece and ancient Rome.
Yeah. Well, as I said, you and I both know somebody that can give you a healthy reading list for
yes, definitely
for ancient Greek and ancient Rome. How else have you been doing with the quarantine? So first of all, how's the online learning going? Second of all, how's the offline life going?
Yeah. So I've actually been starting to invest in the stock market because
Wow.
I realized that, my dad actually got me into it. I remember when he used to say that, I remember when Netflix was only $20. And I was like, why didn't you invest in it then? But so, hopefully we discover some of those and make it big, some of those penny stocks, and so it really grows. But also something that I miss is the hands-on learning. I've been taking a lot of tech ed classes, and that was really my area of focus when I was at Waterford High School. So it's hard because most technical classes are hands-on.
Yeah.
So a class like what I'm taking, land surveying, obviously I just graduated, but I was taking land surveying, and I did learn a lot, but it would have been nicer to really, to touch the instrument, to set it up, to really, obviously get hands-on with what I'm learning. because especially in that kind of department, that's how I learn the best, and that's when you get the full experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like learning how to drive online.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You
So
know,
the break is this way.
yeah. Don't worry about it. Everybody else on the road will be perfectly polite to you. Yeah.
just follow what they're doing.
That's right. Yeah, so that's a drag. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And, we've heard a lot of great stories over the past 12 weeks of teachers, really working hard, trying to make that connection.
Definitely.
Um, and sometimes succeeding, sometimes not, but putting in the good fight to try to reach out to students.
Hmm.
It's certainly been a challenge for everybody. What about, so you've done some more artwork, you've been reading the classics, and you have started investing in the stock market.
Yeah.
That's a pretty decent. All I've been doing is just putting together a mixtape 3 days a week with Connor.
But hey, you know what? That's something though. At least you're not just sitting at home watching Netflix all day.
No, I haven't been doing it. The thing is, I spend so much time in front of the computer putting this together. By the end of the day, my eyes are burnt out, and
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't want to watch anything. My eyes are so tired. So what's the summer look like?
Man, I don't even know. Well, one, I know we're moving sometime soon, maybe sometime later. I don't know. However, I do know that I don't just want to, waste my summer. So I think we have 3 months of summer before college. So I really want to get certified in something. So I'm thinking about getting certified in phlebotomy, which I know is like maybe 6 weeks, just as a plan B. Not only that, to get my CDL license, because my dad is a truck driver, so he's getting his class A, and me being a regular car driver, I have a class D. So hopefully I can work my way up and get at least a class B.
I used to
I
used to have a public service license. I could drive limousines and handicap vans.
Yeah, the class C, yeah.
Yeah, I drove.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, no, I was just saying, I definitely want to, use my time wisely and get involved in something. So if, God forbid, college doesn't work out or something happens, I always have a plan B, and I'm not working for minimum wage. I have something under my belt.
Well, that sounds wise. I hope you're going to fit in something fun and silly.
Yeah, I really want to go to Six Flags, so.
Okay, well, that's fun and silly, so that's a good start. All right. So I asked you this back 12 weeks ago. Phew, 12 weeks ago. And so I'll ask you again. First of all, thank you, Nehemia, for coming back on the show. I have to say,
thank you for having me.
For me, so I just got to tell this story before I let you go.
Yeah.
You started at Waterford 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And I think
it was emo.
And I think it was your very first day that you were like, guidance just sort of dropped you in the library and said, yeah, just hang out here for now. And I think that was your first day. And I was working on something with the computer cart. And rather than just having you sit there, I said, come on over and help me out with this. I need some help. And you just dived right in.
Yeah.
I remember that. And that was great. And I was like, all right, we got to put these cords here, and we have these type of laptops here and those type of laptops there. And we're going to do this. And we got into it and got into it and got into it. And then we realized you were supposed to be in French class.
Yeah, like an hour ago.
Yeah. So I was like, oh no. And luckily I knew the French teacher at the time, and I could apologize and say, look, she's brand new. I should have known better. Luckily she was very nice about it and kind of thought it was kind of funny. But I just remember, like, you were working. It wasn't like you were like, smoking in the girls' room or something.
Oh my God.
And that I thought, that's good. Either this this student will think I'm a complete moron, that I got her into trouble on her first day. And it turns out we ended up being fine. Yeah, and you did tons of work for the library, and I really appreciated that.
No,
And
it was a lot of fun.
yeah, it always was. It was great working with you. I mean, that's one of the reasons I knew, oh yeah, I got to have her on the first show. That's easy. That's an easy A right there.
Yeah, thank you so much. No,
all
yeah, it was a good.
Oh, what do we got, Connor?
Sorry, no, I just wanted to say no. It was a good creative outlet. Because I focused myself all on technology education. Because like I'm gonna be an engineer, I have to take all the math and science and tech ed classes. So I didn't have any time for art classes. So I think that was a good.
Oh yeah, you set up some great displays. Now, Connor, what did you want to say?
You outdated yourself. No one smokes in the bathroom. They vape in the bathroom.
Yeah,
vape.
Come on now.
Oh man, sorry. I was thinking about Brownsville Station. You can look that one up. All right. So, Miss Calixte. So what are you looking forward to when we get out of here? I know what you're grateful for. You're grateful for your dad because you've already talked about that. Mm-hmm. Anything else that you're grateful for? The health of the people around you. What are you looking forward to on the other side of this? What's the one thing that you're thinking, man, I can't wait to do what?
You know what? Actually, I have something okay, so I have two things. I want to hang out with my family again because I have not seen them again. And like, how long have we been in quarantine for? Over 2 months?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my, yeah, definitely. So I want to see them again. One thing that I'm grateful for though is that, just to bring back that conversation again, it's that we have like a new wave of not just national, but global awareness on systematic and systemic racism and oppression in America. And it's really liberating to see, people of all different races and backgrounds to band together to say that this has to stop. So, and it was really interesting to see my future classmates who are predominantly white, because I'm going to University of Maine, like Snowtown, to see them stand up and say that this isn't okay. So I look forward to having conversations with these open-minded, beautiful people. And yeah, that's definitely something I'm grateful for and something that I'm looking forward to. Again, also going to Six Flags.
All right. What song did you bring us today?
Caribbean Queen by Billy Ocean, because Haitian Heritage Month was last month. Whoop, whoop. And I wanted to pay homage to all of my Caribbean queens out there. I love you, and I see you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Calixte. I look forward to hearing all about your adventures in getting your CDL and going up to the University of Maine. And
definitely.
Here is Billy Ocean, Caribbean Queen, for Nehemia Calixte.
Simply awesome. She touched by me in painted on jeans, and all had time 'cause she was the cream. In the blink of an eye, I knew her number and her name. Yeah. She said I was the tiger she wanted to tame. Caribbean queen, now we're sharing the same dream, and our hearts they're beating one. No more love on the run. I lose my cool when she steps in the room. And I get so excited just from her perfume. Electric eyes that you can't ignore. And passion passion burns you like never before. I was in search of addiction, just running my game, yeah. Love was the furthest from my mind, yeah. Carry you free, sharing the same dream. Don't want to stop our hearts, they're beating one. Ooh, no more love on the run. Carry you
All right, that was Ariel Pink, dedicated to Bobby Jameson. So tell me about that, Connor.
Yeah, so kind of to continue down my path of musical exploration, I've been obsessed with a lot of newer music, obviously, and that's one band I like a lot called Ariel Pink. They're not really that important of a band to me, but that's a very popular sound right now, or genre called neo psychedelic, where there's a million bands, people who've actually played in the show before. Um, but yeah, that's just a song I really like by a really popular genre right now.
I was listening to it and it was like, this sounds like the Birds and the Zombies, and it sounded like something coming out of Northern California in like 67, 68 or something like that. The organ and the sort of the way the voices were produced. It was kind of weird because it was like, this sounds familiar, but it's not familiar. So,
Yeah,
um,
and yeah, that's a great band. But Billy Ocean, though, Caribbean Queen is on my workout playlist. Um,
well, Nehemia will be happy to hear that. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that's
He's an awesome musician. And that song is a personal favorite of mine. But yeah, great song.
oh, that's great. All right. Well, look, we're almost at the end here. We want to thank our guests, Ms. Collins and Nehemia, for coming back on after 12 weeks, which is just a tough number for me to wrap my head around. And they were great. There's a reason I had them on the first show, because I knew they could produce a really great pilot, and they did. They were just awesome. And we got to hear a little bit about your evolution as, I wasn't certain what we were going to do with, I wasn't even certain you were going to be on the show until what, like Thursday, something like that, or Wednesday?
Yeah. Usually I'm working 11 to 7:30 at Harkness right now. However, my work schedule changed last minute to a totally different schedule. So now I have Sundays available.
Oh,
So I'm glad I can make this.
yeah. I'm so glad that you were here. All right. So our last show, we are recording our last show Tuesday evening at 5:00. So if you have any questions, and I've gotten some questions from Mr. Cheney, Dr. Rose, Ms. Pizzello. I'm trying to think of, I don't know, maybe Ms. Childs sent me something. So hopefully we'll have something to say. Okay, Connor, I was going to tell you this off the air, but I think, we got to have goodbye songs.
Yeah, and I actually have those two songs. I have an intro song and I have a goodbye song already picked out for Tuesday.
So, don't disclose this. I already have our last song.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Oh, I got that last song down. But, since we're interviewing each other, all of our guests get a song, so we each get a song. And I already set up that page, so you can dump that stuff in there. But we'll talk after. We're doing business now, and the folks at home don't want to know about business. All right. What are you taking us out with, and why?
Yeah. So this next musician is a guy named Tyler, the Creator, who I have been listening to since middle school, maybe. He's a rapper. He's a producer. He's a sound engineer. He's a fashion designer. He's made movies. He's made TV shows. He's made soundtracks. There really isn't something he hasn't done. He is one of the most controversial names in music. He got banned from the UK and Australia.
Wow.
He's a loose cannon, no filter, and is a guy who I've been loving anything he touches, whether it be in the fashion world, the music world, the film world. But last year he had an album called Igor, which I named as my favorite album of 2019. And it was him kind of maturing a lot as a musician, and him kind of becoming accepting of who he is as a person. And that song is called Earthquake, featuring Playboy Cardi. So we're going to end this episode off with some Tyler, the Creator.
For real this time. For real start something, baby. Making my heart break. 'Cause you make my earthquake. Oh, you make my earthquake. Riding around, I'm shaking it up, and it's making my heart break.
Think I body roll, don't give a fuck I know. Ain't like my lord, and might call my lord. Love gon' set me up, don't set me up. I'm retaliate, he ride like the car, and she wicked, yeah, like Wo Vicky, yeah. Oh my God, damn not titty, yeah.
Don't leave, it's my heart. Don't leave, it's my fault. Don't leave, it's my fault. 'Cause when it all comes crashing down, I'll need you. 'Cause you make my earthquake.
I don't want no confrontation, no. You don't want my conversation. I just need some confirmation on how you feel. For real. You don't want no complication, no. I don't want no confirmation. So I didn't even know that, 'cause I'm for real. I said, don't leave, it's my fault. I said, don't leave, it's my fault. Don't leave, it's my fault, girl. Don't, I'll need